2008, Nine Inch Nails released Ghosts 1 through 4. A surprise release, marked only by a 2-week warning by Mastermind and, at the time, sole official member Trent Reznor, Ghosts was branded as a soundtrack for daydreams in what was considered a new era for the project. Having just been dropped from their label in 2007 after finishing their contract with Interscope Records, and following the dense, electronic-oriented dystopian Nightmare album, Year Zero, Reznor needed a change of scenery. Setting the creative terms of the project, Reznor gave himself the following: 10 weeks, no pre-established ideas, no overthinking, nothing other than 10 weeks and release whatever was made. Expecting only to come up with a handful of tracks with studio collaborators Atticus Ross and members from his live band at the time, Reznor and company were surprised to have come up with 36 full, unnamed tracks and nearly 2 hours of music. The album was one of the band's most successful releases at the time, having been downloaded millions of times and selling out copies near instantaneously. This approach to the release proved that bigger artists didn't need major labels to make their money. Drawing comparisons to the likes of Radiohead for a similar approach to their album In Rainbows in 2007, the move by Reznor and company was a bold stance in the industry to prove that Radiohead's push to go independent wasn't a fluke. And about 8 years after the album's release in 2016, I would unknowingly introduce myself to the band with this project. I was intrigued by the concept reading into the band, and it was immediately captivated by the sonic collage of ideas pursued on the album. What you're hearing now is One Ghosts One, the first track on the album, and a soft but gentle and melancholy introduction to the material on the album. This was unlike previous records in the band's discography. The band had never made an album quite like this before, and even Reznor himself admitted that the album could have only been made at that point in his career. With the years of experience, several albums under his belt, sobriety, and a longing for something radically different for the project. While each Nine Inch Nails album is wildly different from the last, this one was truly pushing the boundaries of what the band could do. My own experiences with this album run deep. I'd fight in any reason to put it on, whether I was studying or working on homework, walking home from school, taking the CTA, what have you. I still found a way to incorporate the music on the album in my life. It's one of the very few albums in my life that I don't get tired of. It'd be an understatement to say this album was an influence on my music. The varied elements, massive sonic palette, and the sheer scope of it all inspire me in one way or another. A personal experience that immediately comes to mind when thinking about the album was in early 2017 with my friend and bandmate, May Skomsvold. I had just received a vintage Polaroid camera from my aunt for Christmas about a few weeks prior to going out on this little expedition, and I wanted to produce, because, new camera, new hobby, pretty much. I wanted to go see how it could handle that kind of conditions with the weather, and had always really admired winter on a visual level. I think it's a big opportunity for really, I think it's kind of a vibe, winter. So I texted her super last minute, like the night before, and let her know, hey, do you want to go get photos of the beach? Because she also had a camera, and we'd used it for just hanging out with friends and stuff, and socialization settings. And she said yeah, so we made plans, and we met up that morning around 4:30. And it was surreal stepping out at that hour. The fog was ridiculous. You couldn't see a few feet past you. Looking down the street, there was about 2 feet ahead of you, you could see the fronts of some cars, and then it was just solid fog. It was honestly like a different world, and perfect for that kind of music. By the time I had started walking, my eyes had gotten accustomed to that, and I could see a little bit clearer and make out different signs walking to the CTA, and going on the train. It was deserted. There was nobody out, nobody on at that hour, and I had met up from the western stop on the Brown Line. I had walked to her house, which is about a few blocks down, and it was surreal taking the bus. It was like driving through a storm, pretty much, where nobody was out, no cars were out, nothing was happening. It was like a different world, especially considering, major city, lots of people, and it was honestly pretty trippy once we got to the beach. Because by that point, we were just kind of on our own. And in hindsight, it's probably a little more dangerous than we had expected, especially considering, this is Chicago, and leaving at 4:30 in the morning to go to the beach when the sun's not even out and you can't see a damn thing in front of you. Probably not the best idea, but we did it anyways just because it was freezing cold in the middle of winter. Nobody's going to be out anyways. And getting to do that was pretty perfect for connecting with that kind of music and being in that setting with a friend, and the connection of getting into a new hobby and being in that sort of environment. You don't really understand what that can be like until you're actually in it, Hopping off the bus, there's a stretch of park space to walk through before you make it to the beach and the harbor next to it. The beach was covered in a thick layer of ice. I remember very vividly the orange glow of streetlights almost being snuffed out a bit by the fog being so dense. It was a lot darker because of that, and the shadows that we're able to cut through when walking through the forest section before you actually make it to the beach, just being super creeped out by how the shadows just warped and stretched from like branches of trees and stuff. It was really, honestly, pretty trippy, and we were a little freaked out by that just because it felt like prime opportunity for somebody to walk across somebody ditching a body or something. Honestly, it was pretty freaky, and just that kind of setting where, again, you don't really grasp it and what kind of environment it is until you're in it. And I'd like to add that it was about 4 degrees outside at the time, and being that close to the lake made it really difficult to get good photos because the fog, it's water vapor, so you're just essentially like soaked from the water in the air. It was so cold, despite doubling up on everything as far as like just being prepared for the weather. It was totally we couldn't really be out for that much longer. By I think the 3-hour mark, we were out we made it there around 4:45 and stayed around till like 7:30, I think. It was really early at that point. And getting to we like walked around the beach, and the beach, if you don't know Montrose Beach, has a giant concrete hook that goes out where fishermen will go and fish. And we had tried to walk up the entire hook and honestly just couldn't do it because it was too damn cold to walk through, and honestly really dangerous with so much of it being frozen over. And on top of that, the film was really affected by the cold. So if you don't know about Polaroids, you gotta store them in a fridge to keep the film from getting too affected by heat or extreme cold, with that being like a middle ground, consistent condition for the film. You would think that the cold wouldn't be so bad, but when it's to that extreme, the film can sometimes not even develop. And I had a few photos that ended up like that, where it just didn't turn up when the positive layer of the gel went over the negative film. And just on top of that, when I first heard this album, I had really decided to pursue recording music to at least some degree. I had worked on similar sounding. My start with recording music was a lot of stuff that I just do on my own and not show to anybody. But first major project for me and a big turning point with my wanting to do music was hearing this album. I was learning the piano at the time, and I take learning, I say the word learning with a grain of salt because I had just kind of just played to stuff I had liked before on guitar and bass and drums, and piano is such a wildly different instrument from that where you kind of have to learn aspects of it when it comes to using both your hands in different ways, and the rhythm of it is so drastically different that I had honestly just turned to messing with synthesizer settings on the keyboard. It was a old hand-me-down from my dad, and working on it, I had always turned to using the synthesizers on it because there was so much free will with working in that regard. Since for me had always been like a way to really emote without having to overthink through music. And that kind of ties into Nine Inch Nails for me because the MO of the band has always been create a good song using a core emotion. And that's consistent through their entire catalog. What you're hearing now is one of my own tracks. It's called Two Pairs of Hands, off a record that I am on the verge of putting out. I would say this best exemplifies my own approach to making music, and learning the synthesizer at the time and being on that kick of that style of music and taking a serious love for that art form and getting my hands dirty with making my own things that are truly what I can do. Synthesizers for me at the time, despite learning a lot of other instruments, really connected for me in being a way to very easily create a mood and an emotion without having to overthink it, and learning an instrument that gave me that opportunity. It really was this click moment where it was like, hey, I can do that too, and getting the opportunity to work on my own stuff and just hone my skills as a musician, while still taking inspiration from stuff that I was listening to at the time, and really deep diving into the rest of Nine Inch Nails' music. It still gives me chills listening to the album, and on a personal level, my attachment to the music wouldn't be the same if I wasn't learning how to make music alongside of it. I think being at the spot where I was truly starting to get comfortable with my own skills and making my own music for the first time and seeing what I liked and getting the chance to actually do most of that process myself and get a feel for what that was like, in a similar way to how Trent Reznor's career started out, where he was doing stuff on his own for a long time, helped me make a connection to the music in a way I don't think I would have otherwise, honestly. I don't think I'd be the same without having listened to this album, and my music would be very different to what it is now. And I'm thankful for that in a way, because having the oddball record in the catalog really be the one that, contrary to popular opinions in that community, really hooked me in, made me feel comfort in what I was doing on my own because of that creative risk that the band was taking. And then really, at the end of the day, the record's just amazing. The band knows how to make a quality album, and that being what I've really connected with and found comfort in with the move at the time gave me a lot of propulsion to do my own thing and really whatever I felt I needed to do to get that creative side of me expressed appropriately. While it's not really beloved by the fan base, and maybe not even any of the hardcore fans, being in that hardcore audience of the band and having so much appreciation for the art form of music, this one is still one I constantly come back to and see inspiration in ways it's clicked for my own music. I'm going to let it close with the last few moments of the song. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this album and what it means to me. Thanks.